What is good, everybody? Episode 12 of the Throwback here on Inside Carolina, InsideCarolina.com. I'm your host, Joey Powell. Along with me tonight is probably the A squad. I will bring them in and introduce them very soon. But you know what the show is all about. We're about nostalgia. We're about, reveling in the good feeling of past Carolina games. Hey, we actually did a game that Carolina lost recently. So you can't say that we're all just about wins and chasing the W's. But we do appreciate the nostalgia in being a fan and kind of having a chance to look back at some of the more important and impactful games in Carolina sports history. And before we get rolling, I want to do some housekeeping. I want to thank everybody so far for listening. If you have not yet, please hit that subscribe button. Make sure you get all of Inside Carolina's content sent directly to your phone or iPad or however you consume us. Make sure you take a chance to rate and review us. That gives us a chance to bump up to the top of the algorithm that both iTunes and Google Play, and I don't know how Spotify does it, but either way, give us that rate, give us that review, gives us a little better exposure for advertisers. Matter of fact, I'll throw out to one of our panel guests in a few minutes to talk about an advertiser too. But do that for us, guys. Like, we're trying to put together a good program. We want to do good stuff for y'all. So just let us know how we're doing. Give us that good review. If we're not doing good, don't blame me. Blame me. But make sure we know about it, right? Give a heads up to Buck or Tommy or Ben or whomever and let us know what we can be doing better, because we want to make sure that we are helping out all of our subscribers and the folks that are expecting high-level performance and high-level content from Inside Carolina. With all that said, what are we talking about today here on episode 12? Well, thanks to the good folks at Johnny T-Shirt, JohnnyT-Shirt.com. Hit them up. Nike stuff. Was just talking with one of our panel guests about his – I'm assuming he's got a swoosh tattooed on his femur at some point, but his love for all things Nike. But Johnny T is a great place to hit up to get Nike stuff, to get any UNC stuff, to get any kind of gear that you want, tailgating stuff, anything to decorate your office, whatever. Take care of Johnny T-Shirt. They've been taking care of us for a long time, JohnnyT-Shirt.com. But thanks to Johnny T-Shirt, today we're going to talk about the 1998 UNC basketball game in Atlanta against Georgia Tech. All right, right now you're thinking, okay, that's not a big game. That wasn't a big deal. It wasn't a title game. Georgia Tech wasn't any good. Slow your roll. This game was absolutely full of highlights. It was chock full of talent. It was chock full of marquee players. It was absolutely everything you would probably want in a throwback episode. So let's kind of set the stage for you, as I often do when we get rolling these podcasts. February the 8th, 1998. Well, what's going on in the world of Carolina basketball at this point in time? They had just come off of an absolute shellacking of the then number one Duke Blue Devils in the Smith Center. Just so much to know about that game that this was the game right after it. And that'll come into play a little bit later when we start talking to our panelists and start breaking down the game. But UNC was never ranked below number 4 this season. They were coming in at 23-1. Their only loss coming to a Maryland team a couple weeks prior that, maybe they probably could have won, just didn't put it all together. But 23-1. I'll get to the starting lineups in a second, but they had just beaten Duke the prior Thursday. This is a game on a Sunday, the same day as the NBA All-Star game. It's one of the reasons I remember this game so eloquently. They were coming off of 7 straight wins. This roster had 5 NBA players on it. Those guys you probably remember, a dude named Jamison and Carter. Ed Cota was in there. A couple of decent guys on this roster. Georgia Tech, on the flip side, not as good, had some talent. Wasn't one of Bobby Crimmins' best squads, but they were 14-9. The only win they had thus far in the season was against a 20-ish ranked Louisville team back in November. They had scratched the top 25 then and then fell back out and had gone 4-6 in their last 10 leading up to this game against UNC. They had lost also exactly a month prior, on January the 8th in Chapel Hill to the Tar Heels by 21. Wasn't even a close game. I mean, Georgia Tech was top 50 in points per game, but they were just blah everywhere else. A very meh team. And when you watch the game back when we watched it back, Jay Billups was saying, well, this team's going to be an NCAA tournament team. I don't know what he was getting that from other than just hyping them because of the game. But this team specifically, the 97-98 group of Tar Heels, has often been called one of the best, if not the best, to never win a title. Lot going on here. ESPN2 is still kind of a new thing. You'll see when you rewatch it, their graphics were kind of stupid. Their little pregame highlight that they did with like the sepia tones or whatever was just hot garbage. North Carolina starting Shammond Williams, remember that name, Ed Cota, Maktar Jai, Vince Carter, and Anton Jamison. Georgia Tech, however, counters with Deion Glover, Travis Spivey, Matt Harpering, Michael Maddox, and a freshman Alvin Jones. All right. Referees for the game because you care, Rick Hartzell, Mike Wood, and Zelton Steed. Going back to the question that you asked earlier, guys, why are we watching this game? This game had marquee players. It had highlights. It had points on points on points. It had 2 sessions of extra basketball. I don't want to say free basketball because it's all free if you're watching on TV. But now I want to bring in the panelists that I mentioned earlier, the A squad of Carolina podcasting. First, Relly Mack, Sherrell McMillan. How you doing, buddy?
I'm great. Ready to talk about this game. I learned a lot that I thought I knew, but I guess I'd forgotten.
Well, I'm glad I could facilitate such. And also joining us, a guy that I want to give a shout out to because he's been so instrumental in helping get this podcast up and running this year, mostly behind the scenes, but you probably hear him on a lot of other Inside Carolina shows. John Sieglie, Captain Robot, how you doing, buddy?
Doing well. It was Boy Robot because if you're watching on YouTube, I do look like I am just graduating from probably high school, but
hey,
yeah.
Don't fight that. As boyish good looks will take you far in life. I wouldn't know, but I've heard such.
I hope so.
So now that I've got you guys officially on board, we talked about a little sponsor-ish earlier, and I hear that Rel's up on a new package, and John Sieglie is also waiting on a new connect. Rel, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, come on, Rel. Let's go.
Oh, well, I would just say to everyone, we have great sponsors here in South Carolina. And just imagine, so, the NCAA to announce or the ACC announce 10+1 schedule. North Carolina's going to have some great home games. If you're not able to go, imagine yourself at home in your Jordan Brand jersey.
We ain't going to be able to go.
So imagine yourself in your Jordan Brand jersey, in your Nike shorts, and your Jordan shoes from Carolina with
Johnny
your
T-shirt.
Nike socks from Johnny T-shirt. Imagine sitting in your living room and having some delicious crab delivered from Baltimore and Jimmy's Seafood. I can't think of anyone who has 2 great sponsors like we do. Crab and Nike. What more do you need?
Yeah, I mean, Johnny T-shirt and Jimmy's famous. And now apparently Johnny Siegs is getting into the game, so you're waiting on a package too?
Yep, I took advantage of some free shipping that they were offering that Sherrell was basically jumping up and down on social media about. So I will be trying these famous crab cakes, which look like they're the size of my head basically from the photos online. So that's coming in this week on Friday. And shout out, I think Viplis was the first one that got to talk about Jimmy's famous, and just everyone else in South Carolina has talked about how good that stuff is. So looking forward to it.
All right. So you guys heard it here first. Go ahead and get your re-up, get in touch with the folks in Baltimore. I don't even know if Jimmy's is East Baltimore or West Baltimore, but look, some of the Baltimore people have a new package that you guys need to get up on. If you haven't picked up the lingo I'm dropping, you need to watch The Wire, and I'm surprised that you're listening to this show and have yet to watch The Wire. But all that, we've digressed. We've given shout out to our sponsors. Let's talk about the game. Sherrell, I'll go to you first. What was your memory of this ball game before we had our throwback viewing?
Before it was the deflection I think Vince Carter had in overtime went off. It looked like it went off his foot, but maybe it was the shin. And he outraced Matt Harpering, who ended up playing 50 minutes in that game, which I didn't realize at the time. Caught the ball and dunked it, easy dunk, got everybody excited. So that was the first thing that came to mind as far as an actual play. The stat book came to mind that's the first thing I think of is just how huge that box score looked and some of the numbers put up. Yes. That's the first thing, but the first play is that Vince Carter play.
We'll visit the box score later, but that was one of a smorgasbord of highlights, since we've been talking about food, a smorgasbord of highlights that this game would provide for us. John, I know you've got a rather unique memory of this game before the throwback viewing. What do you got for us?
Yeah, so I was actually at this game, believe it or not. Would have been probably 11 years old, and this is the first Carolina basketball game I ever attended live, because I grew up in this small town called Murphy, North Carolina, which, if you don't know about Murphy, it is the furthest town west in the state that's incorporated. There's some other towns that are smaller, but it is in the middle of nowhere.
It's like right there.
Oh yeah,
right there.
It's 10 minutes from Tennessee and 10 minutes from Georgia, basically. And growing up, we did not make it to Chapel Hill hardly ever. And this Atlanta was like an hour 45 away, as opposed to Chapel Hill, which is about 5.5 or 6 hours away. So my dad, this was kind of his one thing. He saved up money. We go down there, and this was the first ever game. And my first memory of this game is actually that we get there, and my dad had not bought tickets ahead of time. We bought them off a scalper, and they were fake tickets.
Dude.
So he blew the entire budget right there, and we tried to get inside, and they were fake tickets. We were distraught, and I'm about to cry. 11-year-old John wearing the UNC shirt, and then this Georgia Tech fan saw and was like, "Can't believe that happened to y'all," and actually gave us 2 tickets.
Oh,
so we did get inside. So, and really the game itself, because I was 11, and I just remember how loud it was and the excitement and the energy. So watching it back, because I don't really remember specific plays, but now watching it, it puts context as to why I remember just the crowd being so loud and that flow. Because, I mean, you've already said it, Joey, but the highlights in this one are just incredible. So that was my memory going into this rewatch.
It's cool to give that some context. I mean, low key, anybody who has ever been, and depending on what you read, will say that the Thriller-Dome was one of the more, I guess, oppressive or suffocating environments when Georgia Tech was good and when it was loud. All right, so now we're getting to we've set it up. We're going to kind of start running down the flow of the game, or the major events of the game. John, I'll go to you first. In the rewatch, what was the biggest takeaway that you had as we're getting started, like as the game's kind of getting its own identity?
It's got to be the Vince Carter dunk at the 17:03 mark, when he just came down and basically, like the announcers mentioned, that he bruised his arm because he hit the rim so hard. And I think he could have put his elbow through the, just hung there if he wanted to. But to start it off, it's got to be that. That's got to be the first major event. 3 minutes into the game, and Vince just lets you know, hey, this is Vince Carter, and this is what I'm going to be doing today.
And he always made them all look so effortless, and this is another one. I had that in my notes. I also had that, again, knowing what we know now, it's easy to make this mark, but the 18-minute mark in the first half was Shammond Williams' first 3. I also want to point out, too, how weird it was seeing the difference between the pro three-point line and the college three-point line versus what we see now. But I digress. Rel, what kind of things that jumped out at you as the game was starting to carve out its own feel?
I think the storyline, I had forgotten that this game was immediately after Duke. And that was back when, there were Sunday afternoon games or Sunday games in general. So this was a Thursday, Sunday type deal. And in the reel at the beginning, when they're talking to Coach Bill Guthridge, his first year as a head coach, he was talking about how they took Friday off because the guys were so fatigued. And I think they got out to a pretty good lead early, and that kind of dissipated as the game went on. I mean, they were up a healthy amount at halftime as well. But I think, hearing Jay Billis and seeing Jay Billis
with hair.
I had forgotten, honestly, I'd forgotten he's been at ESPN this long. I was like, wow, Jay Billis is doing color analysis in 1998. That's 22 years ago. So that caught me off guard, for one. Mike Patrick is Mike Patrick, so it was interesting to hear his voice again. It had been a while. And then, like you said, with the game flow, it just jumped off the page to me, or jumped off the video screen to me, how different players were then versus now. And I don't mean to make this a, back in my day type deal, but, there's 2 top 5 picks on the court for North Carolina. It just, not to use cliches, but they just look like dudes, like getting on the court, and I think that has changed tremendously over the last, 20 plus years, just because of one and done, and other schools are, getting some of these more dominant athletic, top 5 overall type players. So that was surprising to me, just how athletic they were, how long they were, the ease with which they scored. They shot, I think it was 64% in the first half. I mean, they just weren't missing. And it wasn't because Georgia Tech was doing anything really bad. It was just they could finish so well around the basket. And then they had, a magician, getting them the ball in the post. So I could go on and on, but that was my initial read, was just like how different these dudes look than college players today.
A couple of notes I wanted to throw out. Specifically, you're exactly right about the high percentage that North Carolina shot, and that was against a zone that was giving them a little bit of trouble first when Georgia Tech first threw it on them. I had also forgotten that Bobby Crimmins was a junk defense guy, but I remembered that seeing this game as it went on, that he was one that was willing to do that. But you just hit on a couple of things that I think are really key about this team that you would see in the I guess they were encompassed in this game from a standpoint of UNC had barely went 6 deep, 7 if you want to count Haywood later in the year, but I mean went 6 deep. And everybody on that roster looked like a dude. I mean, Maktar was a dude. Ademola Okulaja, who looking at him now, I'm like, God, do you plug him in on any team in the ACC? And he's a freak because of the build that he had, the skill set that he had, how different his game was, and that you had such a difference maker in Ed Cota, who had 2 points in this game. Wow. Wow. 13 assists, but 2 points. And all these other guys. And not to be outdone, you go look at and you'll see it in the box score when we talk about that later, but you go look at who Georgia Tech was lining up against them. I mean, Harpering and Jamison were basically 1 and 2 in just about every offensive category. And you've got Maddox, who would have a great game, and Glover. And then Alvin Jones was a bit of a talent. I mean, I think he probably thought he was a little better than he was, but Alvin Jones turned out to be a pretty decent talent. So I think both of those notes are pretty powerful that you guys shared just now. Sherrell, talking about the game flow, it never felt like, I mean, and obviously it wouldn't get that way because it was an overtime game, but it felt like Carolina was always close to kind of stepping on the gas, and they never did.
Yeah, and I think maybe I'll go ahead and say this. So one thing I noticed in that I'd forgotten the depth issues, because when you just start talking about 1998 North Carolina, you're like, oh, that team was loaded. They had Antoine Jamison and Vince Carter.
How did they ever lose?
Yeah, how did they ever lose? And then you start thinking about it. It's like, okay, so who's the 6th best player on that team? And you would say, well, probably Maktar Jai. And then it was like, okay, who's the 7th? And you're like, I don't know. Yeah. So, I mean, legitimately, there wasn't much depth. And I'm going to say this, and, me and Brian Ives, stat guru for the ACC Network, had talked about this game a couple of weeks ago, actually. It's pretty funny. And he made a pretty great observation that Carolina fans are not going to like. But that 98 team reminds, kind of the way it was built, reminds me of that Duke team with Zion Williamson and R.J. Barrett and Cameron Reddish. They didn't have quite the third guy who was a Cameron Reddish talent, even though Shammond was as good as Reddish was. But just a team, you could see why they would win the national championship, and you would also see why they probably wouldn't in that one game. I thought you saw all of that, being that when Shammond was on and Antoine was doing his thing, and Vince kind of being the third guy and Cota distributing, it's like there's no way you're going to beat this team. At the same token, it's like, well, if it's just Shammond who's making shots from the outside, and Vince maybe trails off some, and Ed Cota's not scoring, then kind of what do you do? So I think you saw a perfect balance of why, they probably should have won the national championship and why they didn't.
John, what do you think?
Yep. I mean, I think Rel hit it on the nail on the head there. I mean, one thing that I noticed as far as the depth is that, Maktar Jai played a lot in this game, a lot more than what probably maybe fans expected going into it. But if you look at it, especially during crunch time, UNC went small. It was actually Jamison at the 5.
Yeah.
And they had Okulaja at the 4, but they were kind of just playing that swarming post defense. And I mean, the flow of the game, I actually thought that the first half was pretty choppy. It had its moments where I think Carolina maybe got a little bit ahead of themselves and ended up getting sloppy a little bit. And, at halftime, obviously going to OT was big because the regular, when regulation ended, it was only 80-80.
Yeah.
But you would think that it was like this, it would have been the 90s just during regulation with how the guys were getting up and down the court in that second half. The first half, I felt, was a lot more, like you mentioned, that junk defense, that 2-3. Carolina really had some issues getting into transition. I had one of my notes as far as the major events early on was when Shammond hit a 3 in transition. And those, I think, were the only 2 threes he actually hit in that first half.
In the first half. That's correct.
Mm-hmm. And so Carolina just could not really get their offense going like they wanted to. Georgia Tech was being very physical against Carter and Jamison as well. And if you watch it, especially when they were trying to run around in the post, they were getting elbowed and bumped constantly by every single Georgia Tech big whenever they would come around there. That we can talk about later on, Joe, when there's a little bit of a controversy about Vince going up for a dunk at one point in the game. But the flow of it, I felt like it really picked up. Carolina, there were about 5 different times where it just seemed like Carolina was going to win by 20, and the game was going to be over with. But every time it was either Harpring or Maddox would hit a big 3, and they would just be right back in it. And Carolina also started out the second half terribly, which gave Georgia Tech a lot of momentum, I feel like.
Yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned, what you just did. I think the choppiness, and again, when you've got guys like Anton Jamison who can score in, an eyelash, right?
Which he
UNC,
did.
UNC still never got into a real flow, it felt like. And I think a lot of that was due to turnovers. I made the comment that, right after I wrote in my notes that Mike Patrick hates Ed Cota, I made a note about, the fact that Cota had a ton of turnovers in this game. And he also was facilitating like he always did. I think he finished with 13 assists, but those turnovers, and, there was one in the second half where UNC, I think it stretched it out to 6-8, and then Maktar throws it at Shamond's feet. I mean, it was just, they had some, it wasn't just the amount of turnovers, which they had 20, but it was the timing of them and how it just continued to break flow of the game. John, you also led into this a little bit, so I'll go ahead and push this. I had my notes, after like the 15-minute mark in the first half, I don't know, somewhere between 15 and 10, I wrote, is Georgia Tech dirty? I like to try to talk about controversies in this game, but I'll let you take it first, and then we'll kick it to Sherrell. Do you feel like it was dirty? Do you feel like there was some controversial stuff in here? Or was it just Georgia? I mean, it's not necessarily, Bobby Kerman sending in the goons, or was it?
I don't think it was that. I think it was more that going into it, Crimmins knew that Carolina was more athletic. And he knew that if Carolina let Jamison and Carter play the game that they wanted to play, get up and down the court, go high flying, Georgia Tech was going to lose, and they were probably going to lose bad. The only time that I thought that Georgia Tech, it was a little bit chippy, and like I said, it was a controversy kind of when in the first half there was a no call where Carter had gone up, and it's when he landed pretty hard and had to be helped off the court. And on the replay, you kind of see that the Georgia Tech defender, I forgot exactly who it was, it might have been Harpring, but he puts his arm into Vince's back as Vince is in the air.
Yep.
And it wasn't really an undercut, but, he was making it known that he was there. So it seemed to me like a style that teams have often employed against Carolina where since Carolina usually has an athletic advantage, the other team figures, look, the refs are not going to call every single foul. So let's foul them until the refs make a stop. And in this game, the refs really let them play. I mean, I think neither team was in the double bonus until the first OT.
Yeah,
it was very late, and which, given the physicality of this game, was very surprising. So I just think it was a situation where Georgia Tech knew that Carolina had just beat the pants off of Duke. They were going to be riding high, and they just wanted to come in and be as physical as they could. And they figured that, with the home crowd and the refs, they could probably get away with some stuff. And that's kind of what happened.
That's fair. Sherrell, was Georgia Tech dirty?
No, I don't think they're dirty. I agree with John. Like, why not? I mean, it's Thursday night. You're a Georgia Tech player. You're at home, and you see these dudes like dunking on the number one team in the nation, going crazy.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to come into my arena and just dunk on me, even though it happened a couple of times. I'm not going to
Yeah.
allow that. I've had too much pride for that to happen. So I think that was a big part of it. And the other thing is, Georgia Tech was not a small team compared to what North Carolina was that particular year. I mean, Alvin Jones is a massive dude. Matt Harpering was probably 6'7", legit 6'6", 6'7",
and a wide body.
In a while, yeah. Deion Glover is a really big guard. Maddox had good size. So these weren't just puny little small dudes that Carolina was playing against. And I think they wanted to set a tone early, and they did, and say we're not going to be intimidated by you just because of what you did on Thursday night against Duke, just because you're number one and you've got the National Player of the Year and another guy who's going to be drafted high and everyone expects you to go to the Final Four. That means nothing. I think it was a concerted effort by them to make sure that they themselves weren't intimidated and to show that they could play with North Carolina. And once that happened, I think that's one of the reasons that they didn't go away every time it got to 9 or 10 or 11 or something like that. Because, they had said, these guys they're basketball players. They're not, they're not much different than us. They're playing the game just like we are. And so I think that is kind of the mindset that Georgia Tech had coming into the game. And that's why they chose that particular route, as John said, because when you do have a talent deficit, that's kind of one of the ways you try to even it up.
And historically, and I think it still bears out today. I always feel like in my head that North Carolina has had trouble in Atlanta, whether it be basketball or football.
Any sport. Yeah.
I feel like Carolina's always had issues in Atlanta. So
the national title team lost to an awful Georgia Tech team 3 years ago. I mean, so it happens. It happens. Like they go to Georgia Tech and just I don't know.
Everybody loses their mind.
Atlanta does something to people. So especially young men. Yeah. So.
Especially young men. I heard that. Okay, so this game offered up an amazing menu of them. But Sherrell, what was your timeless highlight of this game? You already, I'm going to take away the Vince Carter, poke away, run down, and pick up and dunk. I'm going to take that away.
I had that one too.
Well, you can, but Sherrell, I'm taking that away from Sherrell.
Oh, okay.
Because you're here to use it in the opener. Sherrell, what's your timeless highlight of the game?
So that's what I remember immediately. The thing I probably remember most vividly is UNC's up 3 in the second overtime, and there's a timeout. And Coach Guthridge is his first year as a head coach. I'm sure he's hearing the whispers about, Dean got him the job, Coach Smith got him the job, and Coach Smith, taught him everything he knows, blah, blah, blah. He comes out of the timeout in a zone for maybe the first or second time the entire game. Georgia Tech gets the ball in the middle. Carolina collapses on it as expected. Kick out to Deion Glover on the wing, who did not have a great shooting night. I think he was like 8 of 22 or something. He badly misses a 3 at the front of the rim. Carolina gets the ball. They start running their offense. Shammond Williams gets the ball at the top of the key, takes 2 dribbles. Deion Glover, hand down, man down. Shammond pulls up for 3, game over. So, just that whole sequence of Deion Glover kind of Deion Glovering with the bad 3, and then
Deion Glovering is now a verb.
Not getting in Shammond's face. I just remember that well because Shammond was on fire. It's like, why would you not be all up in that guy to make him drive? And he just, I don't know if he forgot, if he was tired or what it was, but it was lights out after that.
It was definitely one of those, kind of. I'm trying not to say anything that's going to get us in trouble here, but it was definitely one of those showing what you have moments for the Carolina team. I feel like because
we can say it. It was a do him. It's you're at AAU game, and the mom's over here and the dad's over here. They say, "Baby, do him, take him."
Yes.
And that's what Shammond did.
Shammond heard his mama from the third row of the mezzanine say that, just like in an old Peach Jam game, and that's exactly what happened. All right, I'll hit you up, John. What do you got? What was your timeless highlight?
Well, what was cool about that Shammond 3 is you mentioned earlier, Joey, how it was really weird that the court had the NBA line and the college line, which I don't remember there being that big of a difference between the two. I mean, imagine what some of these guys could shoot from 3 from that college 3-point line. I mean, it'd be like a layup for some of these guys. But that Shammond 3 was beyond the NBA line. It was just so cool. Loved that. My number one timeless highlight was in the second half at the 17:38 mark. If you can watch this game on YouTube, when it's a fast break and Carter makes the pass to Jamison, who just jams it all over the Georgia Tech defender. I should have wrote down his name. I cannot remember. But the announcer, it was great Mike Patrick moment because, Jamison, they've been physical with him. And this was kind of get out of my way. I'm going to throw this down, and you can be on a poster or you can go ahead and scoot. And the Georgia Tech defender scooted. That was my number one. Number two was Shammond. When he really started getting, I feel like his groove was actually the three in the 15-minute mark in the second half. Because like I said earlier, Carolina had a bad start to the second half. Georgia Tech was feeling themselves. The crowd was big. And it's on the broadcast. I love seeing it. Shammond hits the three in the corner and then does the shh motion as he's going back to play defense. And then he hits another one right after that. But you could tell in that moment, Shammond was just like, you know what? I'm not letting us lose tonight. They're going to let me shoot these threes. I'm going to shoot them all night, and I'm going to hit them.
Yeah, he was on a full game heat check. To follow up to your 2 points, he had 3 threes in the span between 15:01 and 13:46 in the second half, and then I also have in my notes at 17:38 in the second half, Jamison takes a soul. Which essentially, I mean, and I think it was Travis Spivey, but don't quote me on that. But yeah, he absolutely just snatched somebody's life on that dunk, and it was one that it wasn't as ferocious or as artsy as some of Carter's were, but it was very much a grill, janked in, very much so.
And it was Spivey who'd been being chippy with him, and so that's a thing. Jamison exercised some demons in that dunk.
There was quite a bit, and some other ones I want to call attention to. You mentioned the one from Vince in the first half. There was another one he had at 3:40 in the first half, and then also there was a Shammond heat check. The first one was at 17:05 in the second, and then 10 minutes. This is the one where you knew he was going to be absolutely out of his mind. He shoots it over a double team in the second half with 2 guys in his face, off balance, with 1 foot on the NBA line, right in front of the Carolina bench, and that was okay. That's it. You knew there was nothing anybody was going to do. I mean, he could have shot it from the McDonald's logo on the floor or from an actual McDonald's, and it would have gone in either way. All right, this is the section I always like to call this guy. It's pretty easy to pick Shammond Williams, but this is my show, so I'm going to take Shammond off the table. John, who was this guy for the game?
So actually, I had Okulaja as my kind of more unsung hero.
All right.
Yeah, because if you watch it, his second half, he was pretty quiet. But in that first half, Carolina got out to the big lead, like Rel said. But Georgia Tech was fighting back, and Okulaja actually there in that first half had a couple big buckets, some bigger rebounds, and the defense he was actually playing was really great because God bless Bakhtar Chai in this game, but he was trying to swat everything. And Okulaja was actually kind of tasked with, look, when Jai gets up there and leaves his man alone for an offensive rebound, which happened, and Georgia Tech killed Carolina on the offensive glass in this game. But Okulaja was getting in there to get those rebounds and really play that hard defense. He would be mine on the Carolina side. Like I said, in the second half, he was a little bit quieter. He had one shot that was really close to coming in that would have helped stem a tide. But he was in there. I think he played the entire 10 minutes of overtime. Really helped out with the tired legs once Georgia Tech started really just dragging a little bit. He was running the court. I think if you're going to go on Georgia Tech, it has to be Maddox, though, because he was very impressive in this game, just the way that he was shooting. But I'll give it to Okulaja, who does not get a whole lot of love on that Carolina squad. But in this game, I felt that he played kind of like that Marcus Ginyard, like that role where he doesn't show up on the stat sheet, but if you watch what he's doing, he makes a big impact.
No, he's very much a Swiss Army knife, utility type player. 33 minutes that game, and filled in a lot of gaps in a very timely fashion. To kind of echo your point, Rel, who was this guy?
Quick question. Let's go to ICTV Jeopardy. Adam Okulaja's last game was against who?
Weber State.
Good job. Good job.
There's a reason Vip ain't putting me on the show.
Well, you were a student then, so that doesn't count.
Wow. Why you gotta go? Why do you go with the old jokes, man?
No, that's not old jokes. So mine is Mike Maddox. Like, if you had said Sherrell, who was Mike Maddox, I'd have been like, he's a dude running for Senate, like in Georgia.
Really good pitcher for the Blue Jays.
Yeah, or I'd have been like, is he an accountant? Like, I don't know a Mike Maddox. Is he in a movie? Is he a movie star? Like, I have no recollection of Mike Maddox at all. I started watching the game. I was like, man, this dude's pretty good. Then, there was a spin move where he finished with his left hand over Jamison. I was like, okay, I see you, Mike Maddox. And then he hit a three. I was like, wow, I don't remember this at all. And then he hit another three and another jumper and another three. And before you know it, he has like 32 points, and he hit the three to tie the game to send it into overtime. I'm like, what happened over the last 22 years? Well, I haven't thought about Mike Maddox since. Like, the dude should have had his own sneaker line based upon that game, because I'm sure I'm not a Mike Maddox expert, obviously, but I'm pretty sure that was the game of his life. I mean, I don't know how much better you can possibly play in that situation. 50% from three and 50% from the field, double going against two lottery picks. Like, the guy was feeling it, and his team still lost. But it was, I just couldn't believe, like, it before the game started. My memory was, Matt Harpring went off, and he was really hot in the second half, and that's the reason Georgia Tech was in it. Just no memory at all of Mike Maddox, like none.
Well, and Carolina fans are really quick to tell you that man, there's always that one guy, right, that just, of course, plays out of his mind against Carolina. But he was quite the load that night. The final line on Maddox was 32 points, which is a career high, like you said, and 12 rebounds. It was quite something to see. The shots that he was getting, the shots that he was taking, as if it had been part of his entire career. That I am this guy.
You would have thought that you would thought he was Antoine Jamison.
Mm-hmm.
He was a first-team All-American.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, here's what's interesting, though, about Maddox. I don't know if y'all caught this, but out of his 32 points, he had 31 at the 3:32 mark in the first OT, 1 point the rest of the first OT, and 0 point in the second OT. So that's how Carolina won that game, is they locked him down for the final 8.5 minutes of play.
Yeah, and the guy's 13 of 25. I mean, that's volume shooting, but still, it felt like he didn't miss. I agree with what you're saying, Rel.
And let me add one more thing before you segue.
I
also want to give you have to give a shout out to Jamison, because he did was what he did in every single game, it felt like. And we're talking about, wow, Shammond had 42. Only 5 other players in Carolina history have had more points than that in a single game. Great. And you're like, Mike Maddox, the game of his career. Wow. Matt Harpring, a huge double-double. Wow. And then it's like Antoine Jamison, he just put up 31 and what was it, 31 and 12 or something. And he took
31-7.
31 and
7.
And I'm sure he only took like 15 shots or something ridiculous.
That's
17. You're close.
17. Yeah. So the efficiency that he had, and the way off the charts, and then just the angles in which he was able to finish near the basket, it's just incredible. And that to me, that was one thing that I had forgotten. The way that Ed Cota got him the ball in the post was magical. Like, you just don't see that in basketball, or we haven't seen it in basketball. I haven't in quite some time, especially at the college level. So just that whole thing about Jamison and the efficiency and the way in which he scores, it's tremendous. And I just think he needs to be lauded, because he did what he always did.
The effortless nature of an Ed Cota pass to an Antoine Jamison layup is probably one of the more seamless and natural things that you will ever see in sports.
Yeah.
Just period. It looked that effortless, and that just like it was just something divine that never had to be thought about.
It's like when you talk about quarterbacks throwing a receiver open.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he did with Jamison. Sometimes I promise you, I looked at it 3-4 times because I wanted to be sure. There were times when Jamison hadn't even made his cut yet, and I feel like the ball was already out of Cota's hands. And so Jamison had no wasted motion. He would just catch it and go up immediately because the ball was in the perfect place. That's just tremendous. You don't see that much anymore.
Kendall Marshall.
Very similar. I don't remember the time. It was somewhere around the the last segment or next to last segment in regulation, Jamison caught one and kind of went up with both hands like a scoop shot off balance, and his back was to the basket, and it goes in. And it's just, I think Carolina fans, and this reminded me of it, I think Carolina fans took for granted just how, again, we've used the word effortless a lot, how effortless he was in getting the ball out of his hands. And while we're going off on stats, I want to read you another line. And this jumped off the page at me. I'm going to nominate this for this guy. 19 points, 5 rebounds, 3 blocks, 5 steals, 4 assists for Vince Carter. I mean, that's a dumb stat line. And again, if you don't have Shammond getting 42 and Jamison getting a pedestrian 31 and 7, you know, we would be talking about what the night that Vince Carter had, because he stuffed every column on the stat sheet.
And that was something that they were waiting for even into his junior year. I think there were still some lingering questions about, okay, yeah, he can score, yeah, he can dunk, but can he do all the things that he needs to do to be a really good player at the NBA level? And, you know, you started to see it. That game is a perfect example.
Definitely. He went 2 for 5 from beyond the 3-point line in this game too. So,
including one of which was just a terrible looking shot. It may have been one of the worst form shots. It looked like my son, like when he's trying to throw some trash into the trash can, and he's about 10 feet away. So he's kind of getting this, and my son's 6. So this is the way that looked on the air. And when you guys watch it back, I'm sure you'll know which shot I'm talking about. All right, guys, in your feelings, what did this rewatch make you feel? John, you already talked about how you remembered going as a kid, and, you know, some loser in America ripping you off only to have some other great Samaritan come and save humanity for you and get you guys in the game. But what does rewatch make you feel afterwards, looking back on it?
I still, to this day, how 98 didn't win the national title. I mean, it's going to be something that every Carolina fan will never, ever, ever get over, because, I mean, you can talk about lack of depth all day long, but just that starting 5, and especially when they went small, it really is a privilege to watch these guys get up and down and play how they did. And it just made me appreciate how dominant Jamison was, because I think the modern, like in the present time, Vince Carter has become such a folklore hero because he's played in the NBA for so long, and people, you know, he has had a better NBA career than Antoine. But in college, it was all about Antoine Jamison.
Yeah.
And the announcers even mentioned that. Just watching a team play that, still play Carolina style, but yet get out there, be as physical, be as athletic as they were. It was a really cool feeling, really nostalgic for kind of that era as well, just because basketball has changed so much. I mean, nowadays, rather than Jamison being in the post and being there to make those insanely acrobatic shots, you know, he'd be at the 3-point line.
He's a 3-4, yeah.
Yeah, because he's such a good shooter. And so you'd have Coda, rather than make those bounce passes, which seem to like bend around players, he would be driving into the lane and then kicking back out, where you'd have, you know, it'd be 3 guys on the 3-point line. And so it was just so interesting and just really a good throwback to see that style of basketball being played. That was kind of my feeling leaving that game. And again, just still 98, just it's the greatest to not win.
Sherrell, what did this stir up for you, or what did this rewatch make you feel?
A couple of things. I think first off, it made me actually feel better about what happened to the 98 team in the Final Four, because I think over time you develop myths around things, and the 2010, talking about the throwback that we just had, the 2010 football team is a great example of how they, you know, over time they become this legend, and maybe it was a bit more than what it was. Just in my mind, man, I was convinced, like, before I started watching the game, man, this team is so deep. They've got so many great players. There's just no way they should have ever lost a game. And when I watched the game, I was like, wow, serious lack of depth. Wow. The starting point guard had 2 points. Like, that's not great.
Yeah.
Like, wow, who's the seventh person to come off the bench? Like, can they contribute? Brendan Haywood wasn't giving them much. Like, he didn't play at all in that game. I don't think. If he did, maybe it was just 1 minute at the end of a half. It's like Mac Tarjai, like, okay, he's a solid player, but he's not what I remember or what's grown in my head over the last 22 years of the kind of player he was. So it stripped him down a little bit to be slightly more human than what I had built up in my head over time. So I felt that. And then what I was talking about earlier with I saw why they could win a national championship and why they wouldn't. I saw the same thing with why Ed Cota is still, even though as great as he was, why some people just have some questions about him. Because, I mean, on consecutive plays, you would see just an amazing pass, a pure dime to Jamison, perfect. Everything looked great. And the next time, the ball would just, go out of bounds off of someone. But yeah, because he threw it off of somebody's foot or something. And it's just like that kind of inconsistency, even though he was playing with players like those two, that came back. And then the final thing, I'll try to be brief in the final thing, was just the sheer athleticism with which they finished. And God, I don't know if we will ever see a Carolina team like that again. I hate to keep saying it, but it just so much reminds me, and shout out to Brian Ives for this, of that Duke team with Zion and RJ Barrett, because they just looked bigger and stronger and faster and more athletic than you, and you knew it and they knew it, and they were going to come out and show it. And
not even marginally, like it was a significant gap between them and
like Deion Glover is, I think he was a McDonald's All-American, a top 25 player. He was great, and he just looked slow compared to those guys.
He was Deion Glovering.
Right, exactly. So I think that's what I remember is just Ed Cota's inconsistency. It made me feel better about the 98 team because it stripped them down a little bit, and then just the athleticism that North Carolina had.
Yeah, I think both of you guys kind of brought in some really, for lack of a better term, poetic ways of looking at this, because you can still see, God, how did this team not win it all? And you can also see, oh, I see how this team didn't win it all. I mean, it's very much, a nice case study in the way to have beaten this team was in this game. We'll talk about that a little bit more after this break. I'm going to have Michael Brooker, who was a freshman on that team, was from nearby, I believe it was Lawrenceville, Georgia, or one of those other, I told in a podcast we did with Tommy Ashley a while back, I told him he was from one of those towns in Georgia that Allman Brothers made a song about. But we're going to have Michael Brooker on to talk about, his experience with that team in this game right after the break. But for the first half of the episode, I want to give a big shout out to my man, Rayleigh Mack, Sherrell McMillan, John Sieglie for stepping from behind the producer's desk and actually jumping on to drop some knowledge on us here and talk about when he was riding his big wheel to the game at the Thriller Dome in Atlanta. I want to give another shout out to Johnny T-Shirt for being a part of this podcast. Most of Inside Carolina, all of Inside Carolina's podcasts. Shout out to Jimmy's Famous up in Baltimore. If you have not gotten your re-up on a package, go ahead and do that. And I just want to thank everybody for listening. Stick around after the break. We're going to talk to Michael Brooker and get his inside take on about this game and what he remembers about it, and maybe he'll share some knowledge from inside the huddle that we didn't have before. But for Sherrell McMillan and John Sieglie, we'll see you on the other side. All right, thanks for sticking around. This is the post-game interview of episode 12 of the Throwback here on Inside Carolina, InsideCarolina.com. We've been talking about the 1998 basketball game at Georgia Tech in the Thriller Dome and what a thriller it was. Right now, I want to bring on somebody that was on the squad in 1998. You've probably seen this gentleman speak with Tommy and I on one of our early editions of what would become the 40 Club podcast. But right now, I want to bring him in from Standardville, Georgia, 6'6", was a freshman on that squad, Michael Brooker. Brooke, how you doing, buddy?
Good, man. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, so for those of you who are listening or watching, last time when Tommy and I talked to Michael, we spent about an hour with him, and he was really, really good about opening up about his career. And I wanted to talk to him specifically about this game because there was just so much going on in this. And, last time we bothered him on his vacation with his family at the beach, but now I feel like we got him in a little better place. But
much better service too. So.
Yeah, definitely. So, Mike, was this the most absurd game as far as like individual scoring outputs that you were ever a part of?
I think so. Like going back and watching it the last couple of days, I mean, I knew we scored over 100. I knew Tech did the same, and I knew Shammond went crazy, but I kind of forgot some of the specifics. You know, Georgia Tech had two guys, you know, Maddox and Harpring that had 25 plus, Maddox over 30 plus, and Twan had 31, and Vince had almost 20. So it was, definitely as far as my recollection, it's definitely the highest scoring from as many guys as there were and as high level players as there were in that game.
Had you, as a guy from Georgia, had you ever been or played a game in the Thriller Dome before prior to this?
No, I never. I grew up a Georgia football fan, went to a few games there, but I never really in a couple of Georgia basketballs, but never had been to Atlanta. It definitely lived up to its namesake that night. It was an electric atmosphere for sure.
Yeah, I'll say when Maddox hit that shot to tie the game and send it in the first overtime, it was pretty loud. Do you have any memories of the pregame prep for this game? Because, you know, coming off the back of such a big game against Duke, you know, talk us through what pregame prep looked like, and you know, if you guys actually did I'm assuming you did like one day of full practice, but what was that like, or what can you tell us that you remember?
I mean, I think Coach Guthridge always did a good job with just having us focus on, you know, the next game. When we were in an NCAA tournament, he did a good job of that. The focus of treating each round as their own tournament, so to speak. You know, as the Birmingham Invitational is what he called it when we played Stanford. Beat them as they were the 1 seed and we were the 8 seed. So I think he's always done a good job, or always did a good job with funneling guys' attention spans, and obviously coming off a huge win. You know, potential trap game in Atlanta on the road, a good squad, some really good talent they had lost a lot of really close games, so they were looking to bust through with a big win. I think we were 23-1 at the time, but I think, Coach, that was one of their strengths, was continuing just to keep us focused on the task at hand, and that was the very next game.
A good recollection on that memory too. It was 23-1. Kind of, I guess, a pseudo segue from that question is the post Duke or a post #1 game letdown for a team that was as talented as you guys. Is that a real thing?
I think so. I mean, how can it not be? I mean, to a certain degree, is, you know, human nature. Bright lights of a Duke game, and the next thing you know, you're on the road playing a talented team, but a team that had been struggling a little bit in the ACC. You know, it's human nature to come out flat, and they threw a quirky zone at, you know, not necessarily a quirky zone, but a zone that kind of slowed us down a little bit and took us a little while to kind of start to get a better feel for, and so that kind of led to, you know, a little bit of a slow start and some disjointed moments offensively, but I thought the guys battled hard, and it was looking back at it, it was a battle. It was fun to watch.
Yeah. You know, you guys knew as team members, you knew when you guys were in it and when you weren't. You knew when you were clicking and when you weren't. At what point did you guys feel, or at least speak for yourself if you can't speak for the rest of the guys that were on the team, when did you feel like something was off with this game?
I mean, early on, I mean, just like you said, never could get in a rhythm, really. I mean, so I kind of felt like, with it being on the road, with it being just a very short, you know, time lapse between the last game that was a high emotion game that, you know, I thought eventually we'd obviously come to, but the longer it went, and then especially late when they overcame that, 6 or 7 point deficit in about a minute or less there towards the end of the game, I really thought there was a chance that we weren't going to be able to kind of rectify things and pull it out. But obviously some guys made some huge plays late, some big shots, made some big free throws, and were able to get it to overtime and survive that shot at the end of the first overtime that I forgot about. Not a wide open. He was challenged, but it was about as open as you're going to get.
They ran that set to perfection. I mean, you know, Okolaja was in his face, but it was a great call.
Helped off, and he was able to get back, and Twan was able to challenge enough to kind of take away his focus, and so that was good to survive that for sure. Lead us to the second overtime where we kind of took over.
So one of the anomalies, I think, typically with Carolina basketball, you know, Carolina's almost always out rebounds their opponent by a significant margin. this game was different in that sense, in the way that, you know, it helped that the Tar Heels were shooting in the low 60s percentage-wise.
Yeah.
But the fact that Georgia Tech out-rebounded them so much was just so different and something that people weren't used to. How did Coach Guthridge and the coaching staff react to that in the huddle? Was there anything they did during the game to change that?
I think it was more of an effort things at times. You know, Harpring was an animal on the boards that game, especially. Jones, a 7-footer. Maddox was really active. You know, Deion Glover's a great athlete down there. He had numerous offensive rebounds late in the second half. The one off the free throw where he got it back, and some putbacks and one. And so, you know, it's just some of that thing, once again, is kind of just a letdown mentally at times. Just you know, when a shot goes up, just to rely on pure athleticism, and those guys were really getting after it on their offensive boards. So it was definitely something that tilted the game more towards their favor and kept them in it when, you know, it maybe shouldn't have been that close.
So I kind of leaned into it a second ago, but I want to revisit and kind of spend some more time with it. Teams that are this talented usually have kind of this innate ability that when they want to, they can turn it on and then just run away and hide.
Yeah.
This team did that a lot that season. I mean, with the record they piled up and the way they beat some teams. I mean, they had just done it. You guys had just basically done the exact same thing to Duke that you guys would do so much more the rest of the year. When things started getting tight towards the end of the game, who's doing all the talking in the huddle? What are the leaders saying, and what does that sound like?
You know, I think Shammond was a really verbal leader. Guys like Adamol, I mean, and Twan. You know, I mean, we had good leadership from all those guys. It's not like any of them were deficient in those areas, but you know, guys like Shammond and you know, obviously Coach Ford's over there really animated and trying to on a couple specific plays. You know, Twan with his effort offensively and defensively running the floor. I mean, a couple of those guys led more by example, but Shalom was a little more of a verbal leader, and obviously he had it going, so we wanted to make sure we ended that thing the right way. So
there were some places during this game that things got quite physical and looked a little suspect. Maybe that's coming from a view of, you know, in 2020, the way we view the game. And, you know, if you foul a guy hard when he's going up for a shot at the end of the game, they're obviously going to go back and look at it. We didn't have that luxury in 1998.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pare all that down and try to just ask you straight up, was Georgia Tech dirty?
Looking back at it, I think you could definitely make that argument. Spivey a couple times on the fast break that ultimately ended up being a Sports Illustrated cover for the NCAA tournament there.
Yep.
Which ended up being a really cool cover, but obviously it was a real scary moment during the game. And I thought on a lob earlier in the game, I think Harpring kind of undercut Vince when he went up and he banged his elbow a little bit. So, you know, you don't want to cast aspersions and question people in that manner. But, yeah, I mean, I think you could definitely make that case that several of those plays were borderline dirty and put a couple of our key players in some really, really tough spots, and could have been unfortunate from an injury perspective for us. I mean, Twan got hit down low on a layup on the break where they had kicked it back to him with a really nice pass, and he got kind of undercut on a charge attempt, block attempt, whatever. And
yep.
So he came down awkward. So, yeah, it definitely some replays would have been instituted today if those same plays would have happened. For sure.
And I'm not one to say that, you know, being physical or having a little bit of an edge to you is necessarily a bad thing for the game, but just specifically with, like you mentioned, a couple of those instances, the way some of the Tar Heel players were kind of put in jeopardy physically, that does, you know, call to question. All right, was there some sort of code red put out on, you know, the two All-Americans to start that game?
Yeah, I mean, I guess too, when you're as athletic as we were, and that's not necessarily me necessarily, but
hey, you got up and down with them.
But you know, that's a way to kind of get, you know, if you're going to go up, then you got to think twice about it. So I mean, that probably did come into play with their mindset as far as trying to take away one of our strengths, which was our athleticism and speed.
Yeah, I mean, that is kind of the ultimate equalizer. If you've got guys that are usually above the rim and high-flying players, if you can if you can make them think twice before they take off, it's going to be in the back of their minds, and it will affect how comfortable they are on the floor. All right, last one I'm going to throw at you. How fun was this team in general?
Oh man, this team was unbelievable. I mean, obviously the record was incredible. We ended up, Final Four, but just the run itself. I mean, when you go back and look at the players that were on that floor every night, I mean, every sixth game or fifth game, you had, an all ACC type level player, and in some cases a NBA All-Star coming off the bench, with the rotating starting five. And obviously Maktar was really good, and Ademola was really good in what he did for us on a nightly basis. But to have a guy like Shammond, who obviously extremely talented, hardworking player, to go off for 42 on the road, and he was probably our third best player, maybe. At times our best, of course, but that day he was our best probably with Antoine. But that just shows how incredibly talented. And I mean, obviously we weren't very deep. We did have some talent coming off the bench, although it was pretty young, with Brendan and Max and some of those guys that ended up playing major roles down the road. But relatively speaking, I think we played about 6 guys that game for 50, around 50 minutes worth of action.
You had 2 other guys, Bursticker and Haywood, got a minute each in the first half.
Yeah.
But you're exactly right. It was basically 6 guys at best. I lied to you. I said that was the last question. I want to push something a little bit further and see. Did you ever get any kind of inclination from seeing him in practice or in summer scrimmages or just an open gym where that Shammond had that ability to kind of just go for 40 one night? Had you guys seen anything that indicated that, especially with the makeup of that roster where there are other scorers out there?
Probably not with the makeup of the roster, just because we were so talented across the board, and Coach Smith and Coach Guthridge obviously throughout the years, and was the emphasis of getting it inside as much as possible. So, there were I knew he was capable of getting hot like that for sure. I've had to guard him in the past and done individual workouts with him, trying to stay in front of him. So I know he had that ability, but to do that on that roster in that venue, and as I was texting you earlier, I mean, just the shots were incredibly tough shots, and numerous were hand in the face, off balance, jab step, go up, and they were also at key moments of the game. It wasn't like we were up 10 and he's just out there, heat checking it. He was making tough shots in tough moments of the game when we really needed them. And so that was what made his performance even more incredible, was that aspect of it in my mind.
Well, and your mathematical assessment of it is spot on, because if he doesn't get any of those, then does the game even go to overtime, right? So the biggest one I think was at that 10-minute mark where he was almost, in you and Brendan Haywood's lap over on the bench. Like he's got 2 Georgia Tech players right in front of him. He's off balance. He's at about the free throw line or the elbow extended with his foot on the NBA line and just drills it. And it was about I think it was a 10-minute mark in the second half. And that's one of those where I could see you guys celebrating on the sideline. It's like, all right, this is definitely going to be one for the ages. Yeah,
it was wild because I was watching the game, like I said, the last day or so, and just rewatching it. And I kept wondering when he was going to get going. I was like, when is this going to start? Because I know he scores 42 points, but I'm like, right. So I guess about the 15-minute mark is when he started getting warm, and he hit probably, 3 threes in about a minute and 20, minute and 30, and that's where it kind of started rolling. And the one where he came down off the dribble, top of the key from about NBA. With the guy
that heat check was dangerous.
I think Brendan and all the guys just kind of – I think Maktar was on the bench at that time.
Yeah.
He just kind of turned to the crowd and was like, well, what do you do? Just roll with it. Probably shots that Coach would normally be like, no, but obviously much needed at that time, and love the result.
All right. This is the last one, I promise. I want to be respectful of your time.
Oh, I got all the time in the world.
Is there anything that you remember about this game that just jumps out at you? Again, as a guy that was on the team that, was very involved with the success of that roster, is there anything that you remember specifically that you feel like would be a good little nugget to throw out to our listeners and our viewers?
I don't know if there's any nugget per se, but I don't think people quite realize the play late in, I believe it was it first overtime? I think it was 86-86 or 86-84 when I think we had switched the zone. But anyway, Vince got his leg on it, got his knee on it, and he and Harpering were sprinting for the ball.
Oh, yeah.
90 miles an hour, 75 feet down the court. And how he was able to scoop that thing up, go in full speed and gather his speed and go up and put it behind his head like that I was kind of marveling about it again last night. I think I had tweeted about it about a week or two ago, but just that play right there is kind of sums up how amazing Vince was, especially.
Freakish athleticism.
How talented that group was in general. I mean, the length and the activity to be able to get his hand on it, leg on it. And Harpering's a football player, had offers to Northwestern and a bunch of other Big Ten schools for football. He's a tough guy, and he was on the floor diving for it. Vince just kind of poked it away and gathered and yammed it. So that's just one thing that kind of stood out watching again, other than Shammond's exploits and how efficient Antoine was with, I think he was 10 out of 15 or whatever he was from the field, and how active he was just in general. So,
well, and again, it just shows you just how absurdly talented that this team was, because that game was a game full of ridiculous highlights. And then you also have a guy, to your point earlier, who was probably the third offensive option going for over 40. You had two other guys that were, All-Americans, All-ACC players with amazing stat lines. And that doesn't even include the guys for Georgia Tech. So, yeah, it was absolutely one for the ages. I'm glad you called the reference that it was recently on the ACC network in honor of Vince's retirement, because it was just such a ridiculous highlight package for him. And he wasn't even the main course that we're talking about today.
Yeah, Ed threw him one back, and I think I may have tweeted about it too as well. We're driving down, and Ed just kind of let him catch up a little bit and kicked it back, and then Vince took a dribble and off 2 feet, and Michael Maddox decided that he was going to, which is what I probably did most of the time in practice as well, acted like you were really going for it, not really going for it kind of thing. And
yeah, it's a pseudo business decision.
Yeah, that was another incredible on the break, and then the pass over the top from Ed that got over Spivey's hand, and Vince dunked that one. I mean, there was a lot of plays in that game that just made you say, wow. And, obviously at the time I probably took all that for granted to a certain degree. Going back and looking at it now, you're just like, man, that was part of something really special, a small part of really something special. So,
well, we appreciate you being a part of this episode today. It was fun to look back at this and talk about it with you, again, especially since it was such a statistical smorgasbord, if I could say that. I want to try to say it 5 times real fast, but there was a lot of bodies caught and a lot of souls snatched in this game. But, in the end, a 2 OT, 108-100 game in the Thriller Dome. Michael Brooker, appreciate you joining us here on episode 12 of the Throwback. Folks, if you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to give us a review. If you haven't liked it, be sure to shoot us an email or a message on the Inside Carolina premium message boards and let us know what we could have done better. We want to make sure we're putting out good content for you. I want to give a big shout out to our guests, Michael Brooker, who you just heard from, John Sieglie, Sherrell McMillan for our panel. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want to thank Johnny T-Shirt for the continued support. Check them out at johnnytshirt.com. And if you're not, be sure you can watch these on YouTube. Subscribe on Inside Carolina to the Inside Carolina premium message boards, and you can get that 10% to use at Johnny T-Shirt. But if not, we appreciate you consuming this show, taking us in and bringing us along the ride. And we hope that you'll continue to keep your eyes out for more Inside Carolina content, Inside Carolina podcasts here in the future. But for Michael Brooker, I'm Joey Powell. This has been episode 12 of the Throwback. We will catch you guys sometime down the road. Late.